I will click over into our first screen here, and there. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Janice Arnold, Board Development Consultant, and today we are going to be talking about, I kind of had fun with this title, I guess you could say playing nice in the sandbox, or to put it in a little clearer terms, we are really just talking Teamwork 101, and to be really specific, teamwork that is going to be required between incumbent and new trustees over the next 4 years. Following trustee elections just a couple of weeks ago, your new or perhaps not so new board has come together, and whether you even have just 3, 4, or even 1 new trustee on your board, new members can often change board dynamics. New ways of doing things can be introduced. The significance of some treasured projects by the past board might not really be well understood, and there's certainly some new personalities that you have to incorporate into your whole team. So whether you are an incumbent or a new trustee, people also have different ways of approaching a new environment. So it can be important, I guess, to start off on the right foot and set the stage right from the beginning. You will obviously have your own board orientation, but there are some ways, some more subtle aspects, I think, to include, such as talking about the current culture of your board and considering new ways of doing things, and working toward communication from both sides, right from the beginning. And since you are there as a board and a team, the team includes everyone, of course, and that's something good to remember, that everybody plays a part in making room for them on your board. So the point is to get up to speed and become an effective board right from the start and keep that momentum. There's nothing more frustrating than getting bogged down with side issues of board dynamics and not working on the actual work of the board. So let's keep the word compromise first and foremost in our minds, just for the moment. We are going to look at delving in and getting into the real debate. And we are going to actually take a look at the incumbents side first. Let me switch there. So what are some specific things to think about as incumbents? What about bringing new trustees in to work on your priorities? So there's no better way to develop understanding and include someone than giving them a role and making sure that there is value to that role. An initiative could come from, for example, your strategic plan or a big project that needs debate and decision. Inform and then remembering to listen to new views. So while assigning people to committees, have everyone at the table talk about their strengths and related interests so that you can get to know each other. I guess that's something to think about as a chair. If you have 2 people that are strong in, for example, financial areas or in personnel and staffing issues, better to have them work together than compete. So as a first idea, have them collaborate on a part of the strategic plan. The fall and early winter is often a time that boards are engaging their communities prior to establishing their budgets. So with new trustees, you'll be hearing from all their new contacts, some people that you might not have heard from before. So create a stage at your meetings to hear about those new viewpoints and incorporate them into your budget decisions. Again, this is having the new trustees feel valued and feel what they have to say is valued. And one of the most simple is really just take time during the first few meetings to have some open discussion and to make new trustees feel welcome in expressing their points of view. This may fall more to the chair again or the vice chair, but consider your agendas carefully in these first few meetings and just making sure that you set aside time to allow for learning, questions, of course, that will come from new trustees, and discussion, trying not to make it feel like a real hurried meeting. Just to move on. Next, there's some interesting work I found that was done by Brian Uzi, a Kellogg School professor of management and organizations. So what Uzi and his co-authors discovered is that success came more readily from a mix of incumbents and newcomers when they collaborated. So while incumbents often have previous connections with one another, the research actually indicates that having too many incumbents repeatedly working together may actually lead to substandard results, since homogeneity is or can inhibit fresh thinking. People feel comfortable around familiar faces, but it was found that such teams often underperform, so they can maybe turn into more of a housekeeping board. So for incumbents, it's time to think about, of course, keeping an open mind and remembering to listen rather than continuing on after your board orientation and always telling. And it's trying to remember when they start asking those questions, try not to be defensive. If you find yourself taking on that role, then perhaps step back and then assess, have I actually communicated my position so that they understand why it's important? So for example, that significant project that you feel needs special attention or funding. Has a new trustee been provided all the necessary information to even make a judgment? And if you find, I guess, that you're not on the same page, perhaps it's easier to question your communication or from your side, as in perhaps I wasn't clear, rather than saying, but you don't understand. So really think about what you are communicating. And if the new trustee is fully informed, then it might be your turn to stop and listen with an open mind, because now they are perhaps putting forward some judgment based on what they have heard, and it's time to perhaps hear a different take on it. So really make sure that both sides have been heard, and I'll elaborate on that in a moment by covering, I guess, ways of talking, debating, and dialogue. But let's also remember that it's not all about you and the past board. The new trustees are going to be coming in with new ideas, issues, and I'm sure some new projects or perhaps pet projects. And the last point here is get to know what the new trustees are about. Keep the dialogue open rather than, in pockets or in, I guess, sidebar conversations with some of the incumbents. A few months ago, I did a webinar on getting your house in order, and I'll just add there, I alluded to it at the very beginning of this webinar, that all these webinars are recorded, and you can just go in on our website and access them if you'd like to at another time, or if you find something here that you're interested in and you're listening all by yourself and you want to take it and share it with your board, you can set it up to listen to at least all or part of past webinar. But I started by saying a few months ago I did a webinar on getting your house in order, which was about getting ready for the next term of office. And one of the points was to make sure months ahead of the election that your board had done a review of finished projects or made plans for the next steps. If you recall, when you first came on the board, you may have also had some particular areas that interested you and that were your areas of expertise that you'd hope the board might explore or take advantage of. Of course, new trustees are coming in with the same ideas and the same plans to make their mark. So it doesn't have to be something to be fearful of or, making plans on ways to block out those efforts. It's really to, open and take a listen. There can also be new approaches to consider. Do you have a problem that's been perhaps plaguing the division for months or even years? Maybe it's let some of the new eyes have a look and throw it in their court and let them see what they can do with it. I've written here, you'll see, create an environment that motivates and excites. So start each meeting saying, I'm going to carefully consider or propose one new idea or approach. And I'm not saying that it has to be some gigantic initiative, even some small thing. But you may have seen that movie, it's called Groundhog Day, where Bill Murray keeps living the same day over and over. So think about how stimulating it is to serve on a board where you come to meeting after meeting for 12 years and do, hear, or say the same thing, as well as hear from the same people. You might want to challenge the status quo and avoid becoming just that housekeeping board. With new people coming on board, you can also think about succession planning and keep that in mind. Have you made plans to develop trustees to ensure capacity around the table? This requires open dialogue, building skill levels, looking for new strengths that have now come onto your board with the last election, and providing experiences to new trustees, some things where they can feel, again, valued and contribute. So with this in mind, have you considered perhaps switching up committee members, or even chairs and vice chairs or spokespeople? And think of it this way: if experienced trustees really take on all the responsibility and leadership roles, it can often allow others to slack off, and that's the last thing you want. You want those new trustees to be contributing. So give them a way that they can start to learn and work their way into that, and think about your succession planning on the board as you move along. When developing your entire team, you might even want to consider having the chair, as I said, or vice chair, step back for just a term or a year, or maybe switch the roles, vice chair and chair. I've actually heard of a couple of boards that have year limits on the chair position, although a person can then let their name stand again after a year off. Of course, you will need to consider the person's ability to chair and whether they want to take the role on, because there's other things aside from just chairing a meeting that will be part of that. But the point is really, have you been developing your team so that there is a capable person in the wings? Something to think about. So as I switch to this next one, thinking about the ultimate goal is to be there for the less experienced trustees or new board members without really overpowering them and exerting undue influence. It's the role of a guide or mentor. And the quicker you bring the new people up to speed, the quicker you can bring your board to working efficiently together. So we'll move on, and now we will take a look at the other side. I think it says down there, Dilbert, meet your new team member, paranoid. Why haven't you invited me to a meeting, and who is filling your head with lies? So I hope that's not how you've started out your first meeting or so. If you are the new trustee, aside from feeling some confidence in the fact that all incumbents were in your position at one time, it's also helpful to remember that despite all the criticisms that you may have used while out on the hustings during your campaign, you are going to have to work together with the team when you come to the table. So just remembering that you don't have all the authority, it's the board that has the authority, and everybody has to come together to work as that team. So most new trustees are going to be eager to get down to the work of the board and be a contributing member. Of course, the first rule of thumb is to figure out how to do that. And three of the best ways to start are, of course, there's listening and modeling the culture. So do you know really what the culture is about, and have they talked about that or included that in the new orientation? Perhaps those are some things you can check out. And of course, just asking questions. I'm not saying that you have to continue with these things full bore throughout your term. Of course, you will to some extent the entire time you're there, or that you can't introduce new changes and new ideas and change whether it's the culture or how questions are asked and how things processes. But in order to do so, you need to know how to go about it and what needs changing. In fact, I encourage you to roll up your sleeves and become active, but the more you know, of course, the more value that you can offer to your board. And now those questions to ask. There are two aspects to this, really. Questioning fellow trustees and administration, but in a constructive way. So it's really in a thoughtful, respectful way that moves the conversation or the debate forward and creates dialogue. And here's where the difference may come from those questions that you may have asked when campaigning or attending some meetings as a private citizen earlier. Remember, now you are all on the same team, and you want to strengthen those bridges. So, you know, it's changing tack a little bit on how you are going to work with the board. And then, of course, there's asking the right question. As a new trustee, you're maybe not feeling confident about your questions very much. And so an ideal way to get you started is to become informed, I guess, about your division's priorities, perhaps the strategic plan or the action plan or operational plan, whatever you call it, your school plans, and also about the budget. Those are really where some of your new questions can start from, and where you will, get to know more about what's going on. If you have those plans set out with specific goals, success indicators, steps to accomplish a larger goal, or for even just a definite timeline, then there are your cues for asking meaningful questions. And ask about really what is there and what's in those documents. It just helps bring you up to speed, and then lets you fly a little bit on your own and independently after that. So I want to talk about that just a little bit further, and we'll explore this concept of asking the right question. I mentioned looking at your board's strategic plan. So let's look at an example of that. Now, this is very simplistic, just for the sake of this PowerPoint, but I wanted to illustrate what I was talking about. Your board's plan might look something like this, and have an administration or operational plan that tells how they will assist the board to accomplish the board's priorities. So if you know what's in those plans and have confidence that they will achieve your priorities, then the questions to ask are all right there. So let's take a look at this table there. And if you see, so for example, do a needs assessment, and the board has been provided data in order to do that. So even just saying, have you received the data that the board, so the board can make a decision? Or have you received a presentation that's mentioned there to interpret the data and give possibilities for resources? And if you're asking for that presentation, make it known what you need in that presentation in order to allow you to make your decision. Also, something as simple as, has testing been done, so that you know if students have attained the standard? What testing will be done? And was it done when the plan said it would be done? So these are all kinds of things, and these plans are your guide to inform you and give you confidence really in the work that you're doing or that the board is doing. So just starting to ask some relevant questions will give you confidence and bring you up to date and start to get you involved and think about the work that the board is doing. So looking at it from the other side, just like the incumbents are trying to focus on being a mentor, new trustees can also focus on being that sponge first and not the spoil sport, not coming in with a hammer. I guess there will be time to test your ideas and capabilities, but learn first the best approach with your particular board. And I'm not saying it's going to work the same for all boards. Boards are different, and you need to figure out your own board. So now, for both sides, the team, remember that you're there to do a job, and thinking about, I guess, professionalism in a way. Being part of a board does mean debating and creating dialogue to come to the best solution. And just thinking, though, congeniality is not a synonym for effectiveness. It's great to get along, but remember that it's not helpful either to bend over backwards and agree on everything. On the other side, though, you don't need to be rude. There's really a way to have dialogue and debate can be positive. But and there's also, not everything needs to be debated. So there's a time and a place to explore all sides, but it's using common sense. And if you're thinking that there's room for a debate, but perhaps the others are looking and thinking, that's not really, we don't need to go there, then seek to find out everything you need to find out, and then you can make a judgment on that. And if you do feel that there is a place for a debate, then look at it in part as open dialogue. Try sometimes to suspend that judgment at the beginning, and if your fellow trustee would like to gain clarity or bring up another side, then so be it. There is a place in a way for playing devil's advocate, and it's just informing everyone to make sure that they're making the best decision. So I alluded to this a little earlier, but let's take a look at debate versus dialogue. Bear with me a moment there. Okay, there is a place for both, as I said. There is a Daniel Yankelovich. He was the author of something called The Magic of Dialogue, Transforming Conflict into Cooperation. And I've posted it as a resource at the end of this webinar. You'll see a screen come up at the very end, and you can download the full version of what he wrote at the end of the webinar, or it's also found on our website. We leave resources up on our website for a while after each webinar, and you can take it off there. If you lose it, even in a couple of years, and it's not there anymore, then you can write in and ask me. And before we get into this next part, I'll just mention one more time that if you joined us late, I see there's been a couple that have come in a little bit later. If you look at your screen on the bottom left side, there's an open window there and a scroll bar at the very bottom. If you have any questions, you can write your question in there. I'll be addressing them verbally at the end, and nobody else will actually see the question that you wrote, or sorry, won't see who wrote the question. So feel free to ask whatever you like there. Okay, so as I started off saying, Daniel Yankelovich's The Magic of Dialogue, what he talked about, and I've listed a couple of examples that he gave here. So for example, he said, to debate. It's assuming that there is a right answer and you have it, whereas the dialogue assumes that there are many pieces to the answer and you are seeking to craft the solution. These ones that I've listed here I find are particularly relevant to school boards. Or debate is about winning, but dialogue is about exploring common ground. So there's a place for each of those. With debate, you will critique the other side's position, but with dialogue, you may seek to re-examine all the positions. And when you're looking at critiquing the other side's position, you might want to think about how you're doing that and the language that you're using to do that. And in debate, you will seek a conclusion, where on the other side, dialogue is really, they're looking for perhaps entirely new options, something new that they can think about, and in the end, debate. So both really have a place at the board table, and it's good to know when to use them. And if you wanted to print off that resource and take it to the rest of your board, you're welcome to try that. So this is also here, this list is from the 11 Commandments of an Enthusiastic Team, which was written by Ian Perry. And I think, again, I've listed just a few of them here. These 7 points, again, really fit a school board well. It concentrates on working to support each other. So the first two there, helping each other be right, not wrong, and if in doubt, check it out. It's really about assisting each other to do your best and not looking for those flaws and then sabotaging the other person. It's about making sure everyone is fully informed and not always calling someone out. And the next two, they're really about the glass half full, not half empty. So helping each other win and looking for ways to make new ideas work. I know that one of the most frustrating things, I guess in my own experience, having worked with boards, is having someone do that critique or calling it down without presenting a viable alternative. I know that one board I worked with, they often said that it was something to the effect about no fish on the table, meaning unless you're willing to put forward another alternative or a viable alternative or something else to think about, then they were not allowed to just call someone's position or idea down. So if someone comes forward with a new idea, explore it before you look for the negative. Ask those questions. There's another way to ask the right question. It may only require some tweaking to make it work as well, but if you hear them out and think about tweaking the idea, that can be a more positive way to look at it. And the next two there, speak positively about each other and your organization and maintain a positive mental attitude. It really speaks about putting a cohesive message and face on the board to the public, supporting each other and your decisions publicly. I know that you're not always able to agree with every decision, but you need to find a way for it to fit, and at a minimum still support the board. And the last point is the same as for most any team. I hope as you head into the next 4 years, you're going to enjoy your time on the board. It's going to be a productive time. And when the going gets tough, you have to remember to support each other. And it'll come back in spades with what you can accomplish and what you even personally get out of it. It can be very important to do that. Now I will switch over to this last part here. And I'm just going to bring up here, you'll see here the couple of resources that I've set up there, and I'm seeing that there have been some questions that have come up. So I'll just start addressing those. As you see there, you can upload a file if you just select it and then go to hit upload. So I've got a question here. If you don't agree with the board decision and have voted against it, what do you then go out and tell your public? So even if you just say, I'm here to represent my voters and I will continue to bring their issues before the board and to let them know that I did that at the board. I know that you had an issue with this decision going forward and I took that view forward to the board. It was, however, the board's decision to go in the other way. And I guess you can just say for this latest decision, the board decided to go the other way, and as they are the ultimate authority, or it's them that have the authority, I do support that, and I am going to try very hard to make it work. You can just try something like that. You're letting your constituents know that you have represented them, but now that the board has decided, it's up to you to go ahead and work towards that. I also have another here, just a quick question. When is the deadline to register for the new trustee orientation? There's 3 trustee orientations, so it's 7 days prior to the one that you would like to attend. And will there be a lot of repeat information given to the new board chair session and the chair session? So there's a board chair session and a new board chair session, and then a chair session is an all-day session. The new board chair is in the evening. So just to let you know, there's not really overlap of information in those 2 sessions. The new chair session will cover the big picture. It's maintaining focus on the strategic plan or maintaining focus on the work at hand. It's also working with administration and then talking generally about meeting procedure. The chair workshop will cover leadership, decision-making, and media relations. So there's different people giving those presentations, although I'll be at both of those, and we will be covering different things. And is there going to be a new trustee orientation in the North? Yes, it has been decided that there will be an orientation in the North. It will be on Saturday, November 22nd in the PAW. We will be covering, I would say, the session up there, it's shorter than the new trustee orientation in Winnipeg and Brandon, but it will mirror the same material. And the reason that we're allowed to have it a bit shorter is we expect that there will be less people there than in Brandon and Winnipeg. There'll be less time for questions. We've cut down just a little bit of the introduction, but I'm assuming at this point that most of the information that we send out is going to be pretty well the same in all sessions. Those are the questions that I've had come up so far. I will leave this up for another minute or two. If you have another question, you can certainly put that in there. I will be on for a few more minutes if you want to ask. And as I said, I'll just give you another little bit of information there. I've noted that we are taking a break in over the next period into December and January for these webinars. Because we will be having the trustee orientations. There's a lot of professional development there. And then in January, we will be having our regional meetings that many of you attend. There's sometimes a professional development segment there, and there's other things going on. So the next webinar that is going to happen will be on February 11th. It will be with Mary Hall. She's giving the webinar. She's the Provincial Director of Safe Schools Manitoba. So you can join in for that. And that webinar, as well as any of these others, are also recorded. You can look back at ones that we've done previously. If you want to listen to even all or in part with your board, you can try that. And of course, the mini version is available in our division dispatches, which are also you can access through our website under Trustee Education. I think if you click onto that page and down in the bottom left it says e-learning. That'll help you access any of these division dispatches, which are much shorter, and they're anywhere from 2 to 8 minutes or 10 minutes. Okay, I don't see any other questions coming in there. I've left it up for a while, so I am going to leave you there. Thank you very much all for joining me today, and keep a lookout for information on our website about any more of these webinars coming in.